This Hangout is now live, it says at the top of the screen, which means not only are the people who are subscribed to the channel, they'll have had a little notification saying that we're now live, which is great. If you haven't had a notification, that means you're not subscribed. And this is a bad thing. You need to sort that out. You know, to go down just below the window in the YouTube window, go to the channel, hit subscribe, and also hit the bell notification as well. It lets you know that a new video is going live. We try and post some additional content when we can, but we certainly are live each and every Sunday with this show, which we're going to get started with in about 2 minutes time. Before we do that, we'll just do a little bit of self-promotion for myself and Joel. First up, for myself, we'd love it if you could support the channel and indeed our efforts at An Englishman in San Diego and also at the Convention Collective by heading to patreon.com/EnglishmanSDCC. Any pennies at all will be most gratefully received and used. I don't use it for personal gain. It's all going into the site, which means it goes on. For example, this week we have had to sign up for Flickr. If you are a user of Flickr, you know that you now have to sign up for their pro account, which means you have to pay a subscription fee if you want to put more than 1,000 photos up on Flickr. We put up a lot of high-res photos from the various conventions that we go to. Not only myself, but Dan Berry and Mark Serby. We put those posts and pictures up on Flickr, and that's what we use for the heavy lifting for our photos. To pay for that subscription, that's what we use the money for with the Patreon money. That's what we use it for. So please, it's not a case of I'm going out and using it for a Friday night piss out. It is a case of using it towards the site. So please do contribute at patreon.com/EnglishmanSDCC. Very quickly, while you've got 60 seconds, Joel, if you want to promote something yourself, mate.
Hello. Well, hello, everyone. I guess I should be promoting Tripwire, which is our website that we run, which is tripwiremagazine.co.uk. We're also heavily involved, which is why we're on this show today, with the Portsmouth Comic Con. And the website for that is portsmouthcomiccon.co.uk. Pretty simple, really. We also have a Patreon if people just want to search for Tripwire Patreon. We're going to be launching a new podcast series very, very shortly. So any support for that is gratefully received. And yeah, thanks very much. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Absolutely. So there you go. It's if you want anything promoting, by all means, jump in on the chat box. If there's anything that you're getting involved in, perhaps there's something that you want to just shout out, perhaps a fundraising effort, who knows. Do let us know. Go into the chat box. Let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about today as well. This is actually more of a beg than a request, purely because there isn't a great deal of Comic-Con news. I got one or two bits and pieces from this week, including some confirmations of guest announcements and also one or two things regarding WonderCon, which we'll get into at the back end of today's show. People are jumping in on the chat box already. Great to have you here. Andrew English is joining us. We've got Andrew Dickinson as well. It's got to be said, he is going to a number of conventions in the US. Looking forward to seeing what he's going to be getting up to. He is going to WonderCon. He's got a couple of shows on the West Coast that he's going to be heading to. So looking forward to checking out Andrew Dickinson's reports. Michael P is saying good morning from Colorado Springs. We've got Super Cat Chick. Good morning, everyone. Checking in from Panic Fest, which is a genre film festival here in Kansas City. Tell me more. That sounds fascinating. Have you got screenings lined up? What are you going to go and check out? Yeah, let us know what you're up to, Kat. You've got Craig Linders. Greetings from South Dakota. Aaron Neighbors. Hola from San Diego, getting Comic-Con fit while watching. You do right, sir. I mean, it's got to be said, I really could do with aiming in that general direction. I need to do something. I seem to be sat at a computer a lot. I'm not... Lots of carpal tunnel and lots of sort of like repetitive strain. But other than that, I need to do a little bit more exercise. So, no, good prompting on that. We need to get you on the show to do another Comic-Con Fit episode at some point in the very near future. Let's get people geared up. We're talking 5 months, just over 5 months away from... San Diego Comic-Con, so it's time to start looking at it. Leanne D is checking in as well. She's back on form. It's great to see she's joining us as well. And hopefully we'll be seeing some posts from her on the Convention Collective for her pull list for her comic reviews. So we're hopefully getting that up on the site pretty soon as well. So welcome to Talkin Con, a cup of tea with Englishman in San Diego. My name's Lennon Sultana, and each and every week we talk Comic Cons, con culture, and all the stuff and nonsense that goes on around it. So we do our best to get ourselves some fantastic guests to talk about conventions and con culture. And I think it's only best that we get some people who actually are putting on the conventions, because they go through the wars. It's got to be said. Lots of late nights, lots of stress, and hopefully at the end of the whole thing, lots of smiles from some happy attendees, which he got at last year's show. Let's introduce Joel Meadows from Tripwire Magazine and also from Portsmouth Comic Con. Hello, Joel. How are you doing?
Hello, very well, thanks.
Good, good, good. So this is coming up to the second year of Portsmouth Comic Con. Tell us about it. Tell us when it's happening. Tell us where it's happening. Give us an overview of the event.
Well, basically, the first year went extremely well, and so we're putting on another one. It'll be the first weekend in May, the 4th and the 5th of May, which happily coincides with Star Wars Day on the Saturday, and we'll be offering an exclusive Russell Walks print, Star Wars print that people will be able to buy at the show. It's at the Portsmouth Guildhall, the rather grand building in the centre of Portsmouth near the train station. We've got a great range of guests again. We've got the likes of Marvel legend Roy Thomas, Steve Englehart, Tom Coker, Liam Sharp, who's just been joining us, Kieran Gillen from the wilds of London, but he's a great guest. And we've just got a fabulous lineup. We're going to be celebrating Batman's 8th anniversary by having an exclusive, it'll be an exhibition of classic Batman art that will be mounted, and we may have a Batmobile as well. We're trying to finalise that at the moment. Also celebrating IDW's 20th anniversary with Dirk Wood and Scott Dunbier talking about this fabulous milestone for this very important company that's really just incredible, the work they've done over the last 2 decades. You know, they started life as a small indie company, and now they're one of the major mainstays of American comics. It's going to be a fabulous weekend. We obviously can't guarantee the weather. Last year the weather was spectacular, so we're keeping our fingers crossed that it will be the same. But it's going to be another very enjoyable weekend. It's
a bank holiday in the UK. You could never tell, can you?
50-50, really.
It really is. How did the whole thing get started last year? Because I mean, you were deep in putting Tripwire together. It was something that was taking up a lot of your time. You were really you were concentrating that. You're concentrating on a studio book as well. There was all sorts of plates you were spinning. And then this convention kind of showed up on your radar. Who approached who?
Well, basically the MD, Andy Grace, who runs the Guildhall, and they put on a hell of a lot of different shows. They have gigs there, they have comedy events, they have bizarre things like cheese festivals, tattoo festivals.
There's nothing bizarre about cheese.
No, I know. I'm a big fan of cheese as well. And classic cars. They do everything. And Andy is friendly with my colleague, Andy Coleman, who works for me on Tripwire, and he says he's always wanted to have a comic show, and they've never done one before. So they approached us and they said, put something together. And we thought, okay, we got our thinking caps on, and we thought, okay, this is what we need to do. And we were lucky that we got Walt Louise Simonson there, and Sean Martinborough, Gene Haar, Cully Hamner, some great American guests, and also some incredible British guests. You had Sean Phillips, who's returning for the 2nd year, Frank Quiley, who's sort of sitting this year out, Chris Weston, Rob Williams, just a great range of people.
What I find interesting about the fact that they approached you, and I don't want to sound that disparaging, let me qualify myself.
No, please.
Is the fact that you are very much about it's pure comics.
Yes.
You are about the comic art.
We do cover other subjects, but comics is his heart. There's no question about that.
Absolutely. But I do know that Portsmouth Comic Con wanted to put what they called, can we put on a Comic Con, which for the layperson can mean a lot of things. It can mean your pop culture guests. It can mean your cosplayers. It can mean a whole broad umbrella of things. But I know that your interest and focus, and indeed Andrew's as well, is pure comics. How did you manage to reconcile between the two?
Well, we wanted to make sure that there were quality comic guests. Obviously, the Simonsons hadn't been over here in a decade, and obviously Walt is a guy with an amazing career, and Wheezy as well. I'm not taking it away there. They're both fabulous guests. We wanted to make sure that it was all about comics. I mean, there are plenty of other events where you have the celebrity element, where you have people from TV and film, and that's one kind of show. We wanted to make sure, so we had them, and then other British guests sort of fell into place once they found out that we had them on our lineup.
How much of a challenge did you think it was going to be, and then how much of a challenge was it?
Well, we
putting together that first one.
It'd be a pretty big challenge, and it ended up being probably an even bigger challenge. But I guess you learn a lot. I mean, the show, we took just over a year, or about 15 months, I think, from the beginning and it seemed like a long time, but it really isn't. I mean, it's weeks and months can just fly by. I mean, turn around now, and it's just over 3 months until the show. So it's sort of coming down to the wire a bit. There are a couple more people that we're announcing, but we've pretty much finalized the lineup. So you have to be very calm. Well, you try to be calm. Putting a show together, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and sometimes people have to drop out for sometimes very, very legitimate reasons. Sadly, life does get in the way, and people have illnesses or it clashes with other events or other things that they have to do, and you have to just accept that, and you have to be very gracious and say, thank you very much, shame you couldn't make it this year, but we shall discuss trying to get you for a future year. So yeah, it was a lot of work. We knew it was going to be, but it perhaps might have been more work than we were anticipating.
Yeah. When you first got the call to actually put the convention on, let's go all the way back to that first beginning conversation of that first Portsmouth Comic Con. Obviously, in your head, you had a wish list of guests that you wanted to get, but that's still a long way from actually finalizing a rundown and a special guest list for an event. What was the first guest where you went, okay, we've got this, and this is the first domino, which will then just set the whole thing off? What was the first moment when you thought, okay, we've got something in place now?
I guess it was sort of Walt Simonson. I can tell you a funny story about him, because he was all confirmed and everything was great, but their passports had expired about 4 or 5 weeks before the last show. And Walt said they sent this thing through, and there's this thing you can do where you can get things done a lot quicker, like a sort of super fast turnaround. And we were bricking ourselves. So we thought, I mean, of all the guests, if he cancelled, that would have been a complete disaster, because no offense to the other guests were great, but he was the linchpin. But he kind of said yes, but he said, ask me again, because he wasn't keen on flying. He hadn't been on a long flight in a long time. But because I've known him for a long time, I had a feeling he would say yes. And he was brilliant. I mean, he was fantastic. Him and Weezy were both great. And there's one of these things. I mean, it's weird, because it's a bizarre juggling act where you get one guest and you go, oh, well, maybe we should get them as well. And then what do you do if the other guest comes to you and says, actually, I'm terribly sorry, I can't come because this thing is kind of hoved into view. I mean, Tom Lee Edwards, who is actually, I forgot about him. He's coming for year 2. He couldn't make it for year 1 because he had a film project. And it was very, very short notice, and unfortunately, it had to take priority. So it's just really bizarre. Your head is in a very strange place, because you're trying to do things. I mean, the problem, well, something which is good and something which is also a problem is that before you start, you've got almost like a completely blank canvas. And you go, who should we have? Who can we get? We've never done the show before. And in theory, obviously, it depends on the demands of the budget. But in theory, you could get almost anybody that you wanted. So you had to focus and go, okay, these people would be great because they've got books coming out, or they've not been to the UK in a long time, or they're just great guests. And we wanted to mix it up. We wanted to have a really good range of people. And so that developed over the course of the months in the run-up to the first show.
Which do you find in putting the show together? I can imagine various scenarios where it's better to get everything sort of nailed down very early on. But I can also imagine as well that you want to try and there's a whole element of timing, because you don't want these guests to just kind of like sit and stew there, at which point then various other elements happen, and it all just kind of, it's a case of, like you say, spinning so many plates. Was it a case of, I want to try and get things nailed down as soon as possible, or did you try and keep it a little bit loose so you could kind of anticipate the unexpected?
Well, I guess it was a bit of both. I mean, we wanted to have a few people confirmed at the beginning, but we wanted to have a few surprises. I'm trying to think if we did have any for the first year. I don't think we did, because I think we were quite nervous. We wanted to make sure that everything was in place. I mean, for the second year, we're still pursuing one guest who may or may not come because he has a very bizarre other job, which he can't give us dates for, as an American comic creator. And we're still waiting to see. He's possibly the last piece of the puzzle. He may not be able to come for the second year because he has a very odd other job. And it's a really cool job, but it's a really bizarre. And you would have thought, wow, that's, when you think about it, you think that's bloody strange. But, I was going, people do start in odd places. Like I was going through my boxes today, and I have a copy of Tom King's novel that he gave me at Book Expo in 2006 or 7. And I'd met him there. And obviously now he's become, an extremely well successful, well-renowned comic writer, but obviously he was in the CIA, I believe, and he wrote a novel, and it's just one of these odd things where people come from, and it does make things interesting. But yeah, so to answer your question in a sort of politician-like way, I realize I've kind of gone around the houses there. So it was good to get people locked down. We're a bit more flexible for year 2, because it's that sort of difficult second album syndrome where we've put on a really good first show and we think, how the hell do we either match it or top it? So it has been a challenge to do that.
I think that's also that was going to be one of my questions, so I might as well do it now, because it was a successful first show. It got a rave review on a number of comics review sites. You had
we didn't expect it on their radar, but we were, and that was very flattering.
Yeah, and all these guests as well also came back and said this was a well put on event, and that certainly helps with putting on year 2. But I believe I'm trying to work out what the phrase is. Is it success has many fathers?
Yeah.
At which point you then start getting quite asked, who's sort of like master do you serve in putting on year 2? At the end of the day, Portsmouth Civic Hall, they're going to be incredibly happy and proud about putting on this first successful first year. But whose baby was it? It was a case of the efforts that you put on?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we're talking about year 2 now. Well, year 2 is obviously a result of the success of the first year, and we wanted to build on it. We wanted to learn from things that didn't go quite as well. In fact, the one thing I've completely forgotten to mention, which is actually quite a big thing, is we're doing the Tripwire Awards for the first time in the second year. We're having on the Saturday night. We've already put the ballots out, so they're on. If you go to tripwiremagazine.co.uk and search for awards, you'll find it. I don't know the exact URL off the top of my head, but it's going to be a lot of fun, because as you've been involved yourself, we got you in to help us to pick the categories and nominees, to make sure that it was a fair spread, to make sure that it wasn't just one particular kind of creator. We wanted to be fair to everyone, which is almost impossible, because I've already had one person say, why haven't you got a small press or indie category? And it's a very fair point. And I think we're going to try and incorporate that into the second year that we do the awards. But it's something new and it's something fun, and everyone likes awards, and we're probably going to lay on a few beers on the Saturday night, and my friend Jasper Bark will be presenting it. It's going to be a fun.
Oh, you see, I was going to ask, but okay. I'm afraid Jasper's a perfectly good host.
But you'll be welcome there, obviously, as somebody watching the awards. So it's something new, and we're just trying something different. And the thing about this show is we were trying to, in a very nice way, sort of steal what we like from other people's shows. And I know we're not the first people to do that, to try and look at what other people do and look at what works and go, okay, we could probably do that in a way at Portsmouth.
Was it a case of you just going in and watching what other shows were doing, or did you actually ask people for advice on putting that first show on? Because I can imagine that's also a case of, no, actually, we know what we're doing. Or were you confident in yourself to ask people for advice?
Well, actually, I have to say that John Freeman, yourself, is obviously heavily involved with the Lakes, has been brilliant. He's been incredibly helpful and very generous with his time. He gave us incredibly important information relating to Lakes, with things like tracking numbers and things. I mean, he's been brilliant. I mean, John is probably the only sort of person related to shows that I've really talked to, because I don't really know the people that work at Reed or MCM well enough to sort of sit down with them and have a quiet word. So John's been really good, and other people are really nice. I guess, obviously, chatted to yourself, and also to Mr. McNamee, Ollie, who's also been, great. I mean, it's the nice thing about comics, and I can say specifically UK comics, because that's where we are, is that people are really generous with their time, and people are happy to chat, and and it's been very helpful, because we hadn't put a show on before, and it is a big undertaking, and it's a hell of a lot of work, and I have extra respect for anyone who could pull off a comic show, even a comic show with problems, which isn't 100% perfect. It's still bloody hard to actually get a comic show under your belt, and to get multiple comic shows is even harder.
I think also it's a case of location. The Civic Hall is a gorgeous building.
Oh, it is.
It's a gorgeous.
When But it is a Victorian.
Ornate.
It was partly bombed. The two wings were bombed during the war, and I think they rebuilt. But the rest of it is original Victorian, I believe, and it is the Guildhall in Portsmouth. It is an iconic building in the city.
It's also one of the highlights of the reviews as well. A number of the panel rooms got.
They were fun. It added something extra, to people's convention experience. We just need some wigs, I think, possibly for people, and maybe a gap for the second year. So we'll see if we can swing that. Excellent.
What was the highlight of the layout for yourself? I mean, did you manage to get the chance to go around and check out as much of the show as you could?
I did a little bit. I mean, it was tough because I was running around, obviously hosting panels and making sure that certain things were running smoothly. I mean, everything seemed to fit together nicely. I mean, the weather was in our favor, which was magnificent. The weather was a beautiful late, well, I guess it's like an early spring day, and it was sunny and blue sky, and everyone was really up for everything, and it was just a really positive feeling. So I did get round, and it just everything fitted together as well. Everything from the concessions, because we had a pizza concession, and there was a hot dog, I think there was, and some sandwiches. It was just brilliant. It's just everything, and everybody seemed to be smiling as well. From the guests to the attendees, to the public, it had a really positive feel for both days.
Cool.
I admit I did have a couple of sleepless nights before. Friday night, before we'd done any panels, I was a little bit nervous because I hadn't done it. I mean, it's one of these weird things where I thought, I've done panels before at other people's shows, and I've done things, but I'd never done anything that was quite so reliant on us. That if we screwed it up, that buck would stop with us, and it would be our fault, if you like. So it was a little bit trepidatious on the Friday night. Yeah,
I mean, the phrase I used, success has many fathers, failure has only a couple.
Well, exactly.
And they are pointed out, absolutely. But the show went well, and it was a massive success. Got incredibly good press. How did that kind of dovetail into preparations for year two then? Because obviously that's a lot of pressure to put on. So was it a case of people seeing the press for the first one to see how the first one went, and then they agreed to appear on year two? Or is it a case of building on the guests that you had for that first year?
Well, some of them did wait. I mean, some of them we couldn't get them in for the second year because we've already sold out of the main floor, and we're also going to be introducing it's kind of like a marquee like Thought Bubble has. It's going to be a fixed space that people are going to get into. So and that's why we're keeping our fingers crossed about the weather. I mean, it's not outdoors, but it is an outdoor space. But I mean, the people that were there, they had a really good show. I mean, Sean Phillips told me that he did as well as he did at Thought Bubble in terms of sales and foot traffic, and the retailers were very happy. And so we got some people back. We couldn't fit everyone in. So some people have been waiting to see, and we might get them in for sort of the third year. But, the buzz was very, very positive from everybody, from exhibitors to dealers to the public. It was really, I saw a review that was quite late. One of these comic websites, I can't remember which one it was a website that reviews comic shows, and they were incredibly positive. It was very nice of them. It was several months. I think it was about September, October, but they just got around to putting it up. But it was a very flattering review.
I hate to think if that was ours.
It wasn't yours. It definitely wasn't yours. It was somebody else. I can't remember who it was. It was somebody based in the South, but they were very flattering. It was, I mean, like Bleeding Cool, we got such amazing coverage from them because, they're a big website, and we didn't know if they were going to cover us because we didn't know if we were going to get on people's radar because it was the first time we'd done the show. And, if I was in their position, I would perhaps consider whether we were worth covering. I know we had an American guest, but, looking at it from an objective standpoint, you go, it's a comic show. There are lots of UK comic shows. Why is this one worthy of a comic website's attention?
Yeah. Well, in that case, then that's the question, because we were talking about what actually kind of becomes under the title of a comic show in 2018, 2019. Yes. You set your stall out for that first one. What changes have you made for 2019? What have you learned? What have you adapted? What have you moved forward with?
Well, as I say, the marquee, the outside space to allow extra footfall and to accommodate.
Are you still sticking with the same kind of guest format?
You mean in terms of
comics and that balance between?
Oh yes, I mean it's going to be heavily comics. I mean, arguably, apart from the now sadly late Stan Lee, it's arguable that Roy Thomas is the best Marvel guest that a comic show could get. I would argue. So we wanted to have, so I mean, it's a little bit more focused, that there are less guests, but we've still got a lot of really quality people. So that there's slightly less, it is slightly more focused in terms of the amount of people, but we've got an incredible lineup of people for a British comic show.
Well, let's talk about that then. If you can just rattle through the headlines of who you got coming for 2019.
We've got Liam Sharp, obviously is a Brit, but lives in the States, and he's coming. And in fact, it's his birthday weekend, so there'll be some activity, which probably will be not related to the show, but there will be some sort of beer-related activity happening probably on the Saturday night. We're very pleased to have him because his Green Lantern book is getting such a huge buzz, and he's one of the nicest people in comics, as you know yourself. And he's a pleasure to have, so it's great we have him. Tom Coker, a brilliant modern comic artist, who's had a huge career going back 20 years, amazingly, who's a brilliant artist. Again, he's a great asset for the show. Tom Lee Edwards, who's an amazing guy. I mean, I've known him, I interviewed him for the first studio book in 2005, and he's a brilliant artist with an amazing CV. So again, another great addition. So we've got him. Steve Englehart, blimey, I mean, he wrote one of my favorite Batman stories of all time, with the sadly late Marshall Rogers. So to have him here is just fabulous. So we've got them. We've got Russell Walks back, who's a great Star Wars artist, and so he's going to be creating an exclusive print for us, because 4th of May would be remiss to not do anything to celebrate that. And he's a great guest as well, very welcoming, very open. Who else have we got? We've also got from IDW, because it's their 20th anniversary, we've got Dirk Wood, who's always fabulous, and Scott Dunbier, who puts together those amazing art edition books, and the guy is just a legend. I mean, he started life as an art dealer, and he knows everybody. I mean, there's nobody that Scott couldn't call up if he wanted to get some art for those books. So we've got them. And in terms of Brits, we've got Sean Phillips coming back, Gary Erskine, Chris Weston, Rob Williams. We've got the Etherington brothers we know the first year, who are fabulous. I mean, as ambassadors for kids comics, you couldn't ask for anyone better. So we've got them. I think David Taylor is coming. Alison Sampson is back, and another great artist. Who else? I'm sure I've forgotten loads.
Well, you've forgotten Kieran, but I think you mentioned him earlier on.
Kieran is a great guest. Kieran is he's just like a ball of energy, and we're so pleased. I mean, things like Die.
I'm just going to say that's the book he's going to be discussing a lot, I suspect, because that is just going on such a ramp at the moment. It's just
Kieran is incredible. And also we've got the White Noise guys. We've got Alex Patnadell and Ram V and Dan Waters. I mean, again, they're going from strength to strength, and we're very chuffed that they're back. So we've just got a really great lineup of a really good mix of people.
Fantastic. We've got a couple of questions that are coming in on the chat room. Andrew English, who actually attended in 2018, had a great time. Took a number of pictures for myself on the site. He has posted a link in the chat room about the Tripwire Awards. We'll also share that online as well. We've also got his comment. It is a stone's throw from the railway station. It is a very accessible building.
That's very true. It's a couple of minutes stagger from Portsmouth train station, and it's so central. It's opposite the library, and it's a perfect position for Portsmouth, and it's right next to the university spaces as well. So we've got quite a few students coming in, and it's a very welcoming space, and it's all about where shows are located, and it's the best spot for Portsmouth, and it's a great position.
Leanne's asking, and it's a very good question, and I think it's a very good question of any convention that's put on, frankly, which is how accessible is it for wheelchair users? Because it is a good idea to have it open for as many people as possible. It's not a new building. At the end of the day, it's structural designs of a different generation. But what would you say for wheelchair users?
That's a very good question. I believe there is a ramp up into the main space, but in terms of further detail, I'm afraid I can't answer at this precise moment, but I would like to think that there is access around the building, because while the outside is a Victorian building, the interior is more modern, and so I believe that they would cater for people who would need sort of extra access. I would have to check that, but it's a very good question. It's a great question. As I said, I think there's definitely a ramp in, but beyond that, I'd have to go and check. But it's a question that would need to be addressed, certainly.
Fair enough. Let's talk about 2019 and talk about the content that's involved. Yes. The floor was incredibly popular, and the guests that were down there were very popular. The panels were slightly not as well attended as possibly you'd like, and that's difficult to kind of balance when it comes to a new show, because at the end of the day, you've got to try and convince people to leave the floor to go to a room to attend something. What's your approach to panels this year?
Well, basically what we're doing is we're cutting back the running time of all of the panels. So I think they'll run, instead of 10 till 5, or it might have been 10 till 6, we're probably going to do like 11 till 5. So I think we're probably going to take an hour off, and we're going to think a lot more carefully about mixing up the guests. So we'll have sort of like 2 or 3 guests on one panel, whereas for the first year, because we were learning, we had maybe 1 guest, and even though they had a following, it's tricky. It's all about balancing, and I think we'll find a better balance hopefully for the second year with the panels.
Excellent stuff. Excellent. So I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a great success. I mean, the guest lists are there, the venues there, all the ingredients are there, and we're just I'm hoping that it's going to be a great weekend. Oops, it is. I'm going to be down there. I'm looking forward to it, and it sounds
what they are. So
yeah, it's going to be fun. So if you can just tell people where people can go for the latest updates, social media links and stuff like that, where's the best places for people to go?
Well, I mean, basically to start with, I guess the first place for people to visit is portsmouthcomiccon.com, which is the actual show website. They can also visit tripwiremagazine.co.uk. They can also go to the Twitter, I think it's pcomiccon, I think is the Twitter feed for Portsmouth. And me, just to confuse matters, I have Real Tripwire on Twitter, and I also have Joel Meadows 1, just to confuse the hell out of people. So on both of those, there will be updates about Portsmouth. They're putting up a showcase post once a week to showcase a specific guest on Tripwire, to tell people who's coming in, a little bit of background. There are links through to tickets. People can buy tickets, I believe, from Ticketmaster, but that link is on the Portsmouth Comic Con website. And
how are the tickets selling at the moment?
They're pretty decent. They're up by, I think it's either 15 or 20% on where they were last year. So they're pretty decent. So we're looking to push things up a little bit, and I think that because we've got the great buzz, and the thing is that, you know, Christmas and January, no one's got any money, so basically we have to be aware that February, March, things really start to kick in, and people don't really plan 3 months ahead for shows, unless it's something like San Diego. Obviously that's different, but for British shows you get a real increase and a real uptake in ticket sales from sort of February, March onwards. And last year we had a ridiculous, things went crazy from sort of April, so we had about 4 weeks where ticket sales just went through the roof, really. So I think that's probably going to follow a similar pattern, because there was a bit of a panic last year, but I explained to them that people don't buy that far in advance for UK shows, but then come February things really start to kick off.
Cool. Excellent stuff. Like I say, I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a fun show. It's a busy con calendar. You've got so much stuff that's going on in that particular weekend, but I think you've got something that can attract people's attention. So looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Excellent stuff. Joel, thank you very much indeed for coming on and talking to us. Is there anything you want to talk about in terms of Tripwire? Is there anything that is coming up on that site?
Well, I mean, we are planning, we're going to be launching a new Patreon. We're going to be running a new podcast, which will have creators talking about their work. The first one should, fingers crossed, we've already done the interview, but we need to do a little bit of sort of back-end work on it. Will be Owen Johnson talking about real love. I did an interview yesterday, so in the next few weeks that will be going live. We want to offer people something new and exclusive, so when it's live, people will be able to search just Tripwire Patreon and it will be on there. So there's that. We're going to be, you know, a lot more new content. Last week we interviewed Chris Ryle about IDW's 20th anniversary, and the next week there's going to be a Ted Adams interview, because it's a big milestone. Because as I said, they started life as an indie company, and now, blimey, they're one third or fourth biggest US comic company in the world for English language. I mean, that's no mean feat. So there'll be that. We're going to be having more original content, and there's something. Well, I guess I can mention it. It hasn't officially been announced, but contracts have been signed. So probably for either June or July, there will be an Alan Moore interview book published by IDW that will reprint the Tripwire Alan Moore interviews over the years in a rather snazzy hardback format with a new cover, and it'll probably reprint the full bleed interview as well. So we're really excited about that. So we're hoping the first of many. We've always gotten really well. IDW is a great company, and we're hoping there'll be more content from IDW with Tripwire over the coming sort of months and years. So I guess that is very exciting. You
have to see if you can tap on Alan's door and just get one kind of like forward or afterward.
We might see if we can get something new. So there's that, and not relating to Tripwire, but of course you mentioned the studio book. There's a new studio book called Master of Comic Art, which is coming out around about June, but I have early copies at Portsmouth, which has got an amazing lineup of artists in it. I interview everyone, Frank Quitely, Mila Manara, Mike Kaluta, Walt Simonson, Lawrence Campbell, I've forgotten the rest. God, this is embarrassing. Posey Simmons. There's so many. J.H. Williams III, Yuko Shimizu. The list is amazing. It's absolutely incredible. P. Craig Russell, and it's just, and Bill Sienkiewicz, getting into the mindset of these artists. And the book looks, introduction by Mark Verheen. It's going to be a beautiful book, and it's going to be in paperback with those sort of French flaps to make it look even more sort of upmarket. Exactly. So that there'll be early copies of that at Portsmouth, and it'll be out properly in June. And actually, Sean Phillips is in the book as well. So we're looking at maybe doing some signings around London.
Nice.
Some activity with that at Portsmouth as well. So, and there's a few other bits that aren't quite confirmed yet, but we have plans. There's a new project that we can't talk about because it's not 100% definite, but if it does happen relating to Tripwire, it'll be very, very exciting. So we've got a lot of irons in the fire at the moment.
And that's tripwiremagazine.co.uk.
Indeed.
Anyone wants to check that out. Brilliant stuff. Joel, thank you very much indeed for your time. Like I say, please, everyone, if you want to find out more about Portsmouth Comic Con, head to portsmouthcomiccon.com. It's got the full timing on there, ticket links, guest links, the whole works. It really is worth checking out. Joel, thank you very much indeed. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Take care.
And I'll see you soon.
Take care.
Excellent. So there you go, Joel Meadows there talking to us about what sounds to be a really exciting and interesting show. I'm looking forward to taking part in that, if anything, because I missed that first year. It does clash with MCon, which takes part on the in Nottingham, which is more of a pop culture show. And I was the panel host for the MCon show, but I want to support comics and pure comics conventions here in the UK. So Portsmouth Comic Con is definitely one that I want to kind of wave the flag for. So looking forward to that. I'll be doing what I can to bring all the updates as well, maybe some live video, maybe some feeds from a couple of the panels. Fingers crossed I'll be able to bring that for you. That will be on the bank holiday weekend, 4th and 5th of May. So please do pay attention to theconventioncollective.com and also on the Twitters for all of the bits and pieces that we'll be doing for that. Right, just jumping in on the chat room. Let's see what's going on and what everyone's talking about. People are talking about Emerald City Comic Con and C2E2 WonderCon. Michael P is really excited about going to those shows. Andrew English is saying, I wish I could, Michael, but money is going to Supernova and San Diego Comic Con. Michael P, I totally get it. I have to use air miles for travel this year. I think this year is the year that our particular collective of fans are starting to get a little bit threadbare. But this is what happens when we support and go to these conventions. It does start to get a bit of a wear and tear. So there we go. We did speak to Sarita, who said that she was attending a really interesting sounding event, which let me see if we just bring this up. This is a kind of, let's have a look at what she calls it. Yeah, it's a genre film festival in Kansas City, Panic Fest. She's watching so many great movies. So far, Lords of Chaos, starring Rory Culkin, about the Norwegian black metal band Mayhem, has been my favorite. And by week's end, I'll have watched about 30 films. Hardcore, get in. That sounds like my kind of thing. I did quite like the fact that I put up a poll on Twitter this week, asking where do you think I would actually prefer to go? Would it be Sundance, which is held this week, and over the course of this weekend is also Angoulême in France. And it was a real 50-50 for a while, but we did actually, I think people realized that, yes, Angoulême was probably the comics are more my speed, but it was bloody close. It was very, very close indeed for a while. So I appreciate that people understand how much of a film fan I am. So no, I'm a little bit jealous about that. Excellent stuff. Let's have a look at this. Michael P. Leonard, there's a great video of a Chinese principal dancing with his students. We need to take you out dancing. I became a DJ for a very good reason. It's to hide behind a DJ stand so I don't have to dance. I look like I'm having some kind of fit. So that's not happening. But thank you very much indeed for the encouragement. Betsy Woodin is joining us from Alaska. Hello there, Betsy. Welcome along. Andrew English as well. 4 a.m. when in Sydney, 2 a.m. for Perth. I'm not entirely sure. Andrew English found out when in Australia would have to be at 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. for this show. Well, I'm not entirely sure where he's relating to on that, unless he's over there for some reason. But if you are watching from Australia, happy Australia Day, which took place a couple of days ago. So yeah, thank you very much indeed for tuning in. Right, let's go through a couple of bits and pieces. Like I say, this is going to be a slightly shorter show, purely because there isn't a great deal happening when it comes to comic news. I did want to talk about something a little bit contentious, but I'll get to that after a couple of headlines. Number one, we have ourselves a number of announcements which are going to be for Silicon Valley Comic Con 2019. That's starting to ramp up its guest list for the 17th and 18th of August. It's a little bit later on in the year, but it's starting to build up its special guest list now. Already confirmed for Silicon Valley Comic Con is Jason Momoa, who obviously is riding high on the success of Aquaman. If you've been to see it, you'll understand why. I understand it's this week that Aquaman is going to be topping The Dark Knight Rises as the highest earning DC cinematic universe film. Not exactly a massive surprise, considering how much of a bombastic piece of fun it is. But obviously Jason and the entire team, including James Wan, is going to be very excited about that. You'll be able to meet Jason at Silicon Valley Comic Con this year. Also confirmed for Silicon Valley has been Marina Baccarin and Ben McKenzie, obviously as co-stars of Gotham, but also husband and wife as well. So you can often find, I suspect, that there'll be a little bit of a package deal in 2019 as relatively newlyweds. So Marina Baccarin and also Ben McKenzie guests at Silicon Valley 2019. And the last thing I want to talk in terms of con news very quickly, confirmed as special guests, you've got Keck W and also Abigail Bulmer, who are artists and writers for 2000 AD, who are going to be joining at Lawless Comic Con. This is at the Hilton, Bristol. This is looking to be a real big celebration of British comics, and it's going to be happening on the 18th of May, so a couple of weeks after Portsmouth. But it is going to be more geared towards British talent. So you do have people like Steve McManus, you've got Mike Collins, John Higgins, Dylan Teague, Nick Percival, Dan Cornwell, you've got Paul Williams, John Eglinton, Greg Staples, but also the headliners are John Wagner, Alan Hebden, Ian Gibson, Alan Grant, and Jock. The whole celebration is going to be of British comics, but it is also being used as an umbrella event, as a tribute to the late Carlos Esquerra. I think it's a really nice touch that this event is going to be using its resources to celebrate the work of this guy who deserves the celebration, quite frankly. I understand that he was due to have his name put as a shortlist for a Eisner Hall of Fame, and I think it's only a matter of time before his name is read out on that stage, because he really is one of the highlights of not only British comics but comics worldwide. It's great that this show is doing that. That's Lawless, that's taking place at the Doubletree in Hilton, Bristol. That's Saturday, May the 18th. You can find out more at, I believe it's Lawless Comic Con on Twitter. So do find out more. That's but I think the headlines for me is John Wagner and Jock as confirmed as special guests for that particular event. Right, something I want to dive into, which I mentioned very briefly on the Periscope leading up to this show. It's regarding an event that's taking place, I believe, it's this week. This is the celebration of the life of Stan Lee, which is taking place at the Chinese Theatre in Hollywood. It's been organized by Legion M and also been put together in collaboration with Kevin Smith. I am a massive fan of Legion M. As you know, we've had the representatives here on the show. The co-director of the company has been on to talk about Legion M and about how they not only are reshaping the way that films and entertainment properties are being funded and being produced outside of the studio network, and producing something new and original. Like I say, I'm a fan of the way that it's been structured. I like the way that they also really envelop the fans into what they want to present. And it really kind of puts the power and the funding back into the hands of fans, which I think is an exciting thing in 2019, to give that kind of power back to the people who are most invested in genre production. Not only is they doing films, television, and multimedia IPs, but they're also doing these fan events, such as the celebration of Stan Lee. However, a post went up very late last night here in the UK, early in the morning, so over the last 24 hours, from Rob Liefeld. Rob is obviously the co-creator of the current iteration of Deadpool, and he's a massive comics legend from his time at Image, and of course his various creations over the years. However, his post was a very confrontational one. It was one that definitely wanted to make people fully aware that he was not going to be attending this particular celebration. It was worded in a way that made it definitely understandable that this wasn't a case of, no, I'm just not, I happen to be going, I'm just not, it's something that I'm busy that weekend, I'm doing something else. He was definite. It was something that he wanted to say. I am not doing this show, and I will not be taking part in any way, shape, or form. It seems to be more a case of that Legion M or somebody in the organization put out a confirmation and a whole bunch of flyers that people would be in attendance, Rob Liefeld being one of them. It suspects that Rob's seen this and just gone, what on earth, what the hell are you doing? Putting my name down for something which I have not been approached for, I'm not confirmed for. No, no, no. At which point he has just made this statement, which I can totally understand, but it does kind of make me feel a little bit questioning about the organization of the actual event. I'm hoping that Legion M have just made a slight error. Perhaps they were speaking to Kevin Smith, and that Kevin said, yeah, it's okay. I'll speak to Rob. He'll be there. That'll be fine. And someone's run with it, put it on a poster, and just torpedoed the whole idea. I'm just hoping that Legion M are going to put this celebration together, that things like this aren't going to derail it, and that it still remains a true celebration, considering that it is a ticketed event. So at the end of the day, there's a financial remuneration going on. It makes it a commercial enterprise. I'm hoping that it basically doesn't become about that, and that it does become a true celebration of the life and work of Stan Lee. If there's any place for it to be held, it is the Chinese Theatre in Hollywood, because it is the natural home of where Stan Lee was heading Marvel. It's where Marvel have kind of grown and developed in recent years. They have certainly taken the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they've taken the baton for what comic fandom is now, and the Chinese Theatre is a great place and a great venue, and I'm hoping that that's what's going to happen. Let's have a look at this. Betsy Woodin, I got in funding for rounds 3 and 4 with Legion M. Excellent stuff. It is just going to hope for that. Let's have a look at this. Andrew Dickinson, he's going for clickbait. I don't know, because it seemed a little bit more about, I just don't want to be associated with this event. They have said that I'm going to be there. They haven't approached me. They haven't said anything about that. They haven't done anything. They just put me on a poster. No, I'm not involved, and I can kind of understand that. You've got here Supercat Chick. I'm going to head into one of the Dead is a Japanese horror comedy film I'm super excited for. Catch you guys next week. Take care, Supercat Chick. Look after yourself. Have yourself a great time. So there you go. This was the Andrew Dickinson. He's just going for clickbait. It was for the Bill Maher comments about Stan Lee. He's back on the radar, isn't he? He's saying one or two things about Kevin Smith this time. I haven't read the new articles or the new statements that Bill Maher's said, but frankly, Bill Maher is one of those things that I think a little bit like puberty, you grow out of. And I have grown out of Bill Maher. Maybe when I was younger and he was saying things which I agreed on a ideological level, but now he's more just somebody who he feels he has something to say while not actually having anything to say for himself, if that makes sense. Right. I think that's pretty much our show. I know it's a little bit of an early finish, but it was good to talk to Joel about Portsmouth Comic Con. Once again, do check out that show at portsmouthcomiccon.com and also check their Twitter out at pcomiccon on the Twitters. That's it. That's our show. Hopefully you can join us next week. We're hoping to get a special guest, which I'll announce in the next couple of days. That's yet to be confirmed. And hopefully you can join us for next week's 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. GMT. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And of course, if you want to show support for what we do on not only the Hangout, but also the Convention Collective and Englishman in San Diego, all the pennies that you put into the piggy bank, it all goes on the website. It goes on our hosting. It goes on our, say, for example, like I said before we got started, Flickr has now gone pro, which means that you can only host 1,000 photos for free, and then you have to pay a pro license. We put up a lot of photos of the various conventions we go to, such as myself and Dan Berry. We put up as much as we possibly can to give you an idea of what you can expect from these various conventions. I know that Dan is heading to a number of them over the next couple of weeks and months, so he'll be wanting to share his photo albums from those shows. So please do support us, because it's things like that which allow us to sign up for Flickr, and every penny goes into the running of the website. Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and join us next week for another Talkin Con, a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. We'll see you soon. Hey.